Archaeology, stop the cuts, restore democracy. Lovely things we can all agree with. We're going to start with a film which will be introduced by Tansy Hoskins.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for coming along. I just thought I'd do a brief introduction to the film and explain kind of why we made the film and how it came about. There was an appeal launched by Manos Glezos and some other people in Greece calling for trade union solidarity. So the Coalition of Resistance and the People's Charter organised a trade union delegation that went over to Greece, and Paul and I we went along to film it. And I mean, you're going to see everybody that we met. We kind of did a whistle-stop tour of everything that's kind of going really wrong in Greece, but then at the same time all the things that are going really well, because we found it, whilst it was quite a sort of bleak experience in some ways, it was also quite an inspiring situation. And there were, there's lots of people sort of, now they've hit rock bottom, kind of rebuilding society along the lines that they want to see it built in a more egalitarian and in a way that provides for everybody. And the reason we thought it was important that we go over as British trade unionists and British activists is because the same things that are happening in Greece look very likely to happen here if we're not extremely careful. And you've already got the same rhetoric being used in Greece that's being used here, and you've got the socialisation of debt on the one hand, where you never get the socialisation of profit by companies and banks, but at the same time you've got the privatisation of public services. So you're kind of left with nothing, but then at the same time you have a lot taken away from you at the same time. So yeah, we wanted to go and explore that situation and meet the people that are fighting back against that, and really make as many links as possible. And as a result of that, we've launched the Greek Solidarity campaign, and everyone will have a leaflet about this on their chairs. And if people would please take a look at this and think very carefully about filling it in and getting involved, because we don't want the same things to happen there to happen here. And the message that came out from everyone we spoke to was that the only way people in Greece are going to get through what they're going through, and the only way we're going to get through what we're going through here, is if we work very closely together. So let's watch the film. We can take questions about it afterwards if people want. You'll see some familiar faces in the film. Yeah, let's go.
Antiquities, and you also saw me on the video, so I don't have much to say. I would prefer the discussion after. That film started with Acropolis, with Manolis Glezos, who had turned down the swastika flag from Acropolis during the World War II. And this is an incident that we are discussing much for the last 2 years in Greece among the archaeologists. Why? Because it shows why Acropolis and the other historical monuments in Greece are so tied with our identity. They're so tied with our identity that German people wanted to put, German soldiers wanted to put their swastika flag on the Acropolis. And the main struggle against the occupation was to put down the swastika flag from the Acropolis and put up the Greek flag. And after the occupation, after the reoccupation, after the Germans left Greece, the first day it was the restoring of the Greek flag on the Acropolis. So it's something, the monuments in Greece, not only for Greek people, but I think for the people that see Greek people, are very much tied to our identity. That doesn't mean that we are ancient Greeks, or that we don't have done anything after the Athenians of the 5th century BC, of course. But it means that we have some things in our history that we refer on. One of these is democracy. And this is the case for the campaign of our association. We are trying to talk about monuments, but from a perspective that monuments is a case in what happens today in Greece. Because we don't have only cuts in monuments, we have cuts even in democracy itself. And this is the main problem. Of course, Sofia Sakorafa, I heard her saying in the film, a member of the parliament, that we are living in historical times. She's right. Not only Greece, all Europe is living in historical times. And I think that in 10 years from now, the world won't be the same. Like in Tunisia and Egypt, world is not the same anymore, or society. But historical times means that the meaning of things or the value of things sometimes is changing. And this is a case for us. We strongly believe that monuments belong to everybody. They belong to people. They don't belong to archaeologists, they don't belong to big constructive companies, they don't belong to the government. They belong to everyone. Even our constitution says so, but it says so because there was a strong belief in people. And we archaeologists are trying to work with all this social outcoming of archaeology, of monuments, of history. But in a time of an economical crisis, like this, everything now in our lives is counted in money, in price, not in value anymore. And this is something that in historical times, you never know if it goes to this direction or to the other direction. So we are at this point that we are asking ourselves, and we are also asking society, monuments belong to everybody or culture belongs to those who can pay for culture? This is the case of the 15th or the 16th century AD, of course. We are coming back, of course, but in many sectors we are coming back. And we are also asking, culture, is it something that we all need? So, from the answer of the society, the Greek society and the global society, this answer will tell us if we do something as archaeologists, as employees of the Ministry of Culture, if we do something that people really need and really want, or if we are interfering with something that, I don't know, it's a handicap to the evaluation of Greece. For us, culture cannot be counted with money, it has no price, it has just value. And for us also, we have to count our lives in a different way than they are trying to make us count our lives in a society that bankers rule. I strongly believe that this matter, to count with values and not with price, it's not just an ethical matter. It's a real and economical matter, because I count my life and my society's life, I count it based on how many schools and education we have for children, how many hospitals we have for elderly people, how many social security, social treatment, and how much culture can we provide to everyone, and help him not only know his history for not doing again the same mistakes, but also to interfere with contemporary art. So this is the point for me, and this is not price, it's value. But also today in Greece, and this is prosperity. Today in Greece, they tell us, we don't have money for hospital. We don't have money. If we have to close hospitals, or else we will be exiled from the Eurozone. We have to close schools because we can't have so many schools because we will be exiled from the Eurozone. And if we're exiled from the Eurozone, you people will lose your money, your euros that they are in the bank. And I'm asking, is this prosperity for a society? Because nowadays, because we don't have enough schools, some families should send their child away and should pay for their child to go to school and come back. And of course, schools opened without books, so we parents had to buy them. If we don't have hospitals, I mean public hospitals, people are spending money to private hospitals each time themselves or someone of their family has to make a serious surgery, and they all come to England and Germany, etc. And in a day, poof, all the euros they have in the bank have disappeared. And the same is with culture, because an economical crisis will be a social crisis and an ethical crisis if people do not interfere with culture and history and memory. And I strongly believe that this is not just the case for Greece, because Europe without memory is Europe without future, says the campaign of our association, and I think that this is right. So I want to stop here and discuss afterwards with your opinion.
So, my name is Georgiadis, and I'm an archaeologist of the Greek Archaeological Service, Ministry of Culture. And first of all, I want to apologize in advance for my lousy English. I hope you find the courage to tolerate it. The reason we are here today is the campaign we launched from the Greek Association of Archaeologists. It's called Support Greek Cultural Heritage Against IMF European Union cuts, and that was our response to what we were living there, and especially to the burglary and the armed robbery in the Museum of Olympia. So, more or less you know something about the austerity policies imposed by the IMF and the Greek government over the last month in Greece. These policies are dismantling the welfare state, while at the same time posing a threat to the natural and cultural environment of the country, and that's in a way our field to deal with. And at the same time they are creating a suffocating environment for the function of our service. So first of all, let me tell you just a few things about what the archaeological service is in Greece. According to our constitution, cultural heritage is a public good that belongs to the Greek people. So its protection is a responsibility of the state. The archaeological service fulfills this responsibility. I don't want to tire you by throwing numbers. There are about 7,000 employees on the Ministry of Culture, 900 archaeologists among them. And they have to deal with all the administrative work and the excavations, the study, the publications for the whole of the country. The last year and a half, the economic crisis has reached the archaeological service through the reduction of funding and the reduction of personnel. So, traditionally, the funding of culture in Greece was never more than 100% of the state budget. 1% of the state budget, I'm sorry. And that means that in 2011 there were about 12 million euros for the purposes of the archaeological service. And this number is for 2012 reduced by at least 35%, but we're still not sure where it's going to stop. In November of 2011, about 10% of the archaeologists of the surface were forced to leave because of the legislation about public servants that are too close to get a pension. So we're diminished about 50 very valuable members of our service. So, as you all understand, the lack of guarding personnel is necessary for running the archaeological sites. The closure in terms of public galleries in the museums, the increase of illicit excavations, the recent burglary in the National Gallery and the armed robbery in the Museum of the History of Olympic Games are just the more obvious results of the lack of resources and staff, the mandatory retirements and the inadequacy of infrastructure. And that's a very serious and urgent situation we're facing with. So, archaeology in Greece, in its various applications, is at the same time academic, social, and political. It participates in an international network of research, protection, and preservation of cultural heritage to the public. It has more or less direct impact on local economies through the excavations and the construction projects it runs, while at the same time significantly upgrading the everyday life in urban environments by protecting the natural environment and transforming through expropriations private spaces into public spaces. So it's very interesting to mention that, but a few exceptions, most of recreation parks at the center of Athens are public spaces because of the archaeological service and the archaeological legislation. So our service has the avertive power and will to stop constructing every free space in the town. And there are also many cases demonstrating the connection between local communities and archaeological service. For instance, I can throw a few examples. In a small island, Antiquities, there was but one archaeologist who was forced to retire, and that upsets the whole community. There were demonstrations, protest letters to the Prime Minister, and so on, because he was so close working with the local authorities and the communities and the schools. In Pieria, Mount Olympus, there was a new legislation to combine the local archaeological department with the departments of other districts. And there was again a public demonstration of citizens demanding not to happen. So even in a strict economical level, the cuts imposed on the Ministry of Culture are hard to defend, taking into account that cultural heritage is, especially archaeological sites and museums, are a source of income for the country, as well as critical elements for a model of sustainable development for the growth of Greece. Antiquities have always been rather sensitive and heavy subject in Greece, and not only because you can find them almost everywhere. You can find everywhere material traces of the past which is generally recognized as the generator of a series of Western culture's values, but also because the Greek state itself constructs its own existence and identity on that recognition and on the appropriation of those material remains. Nowadays that the Greek national identity is not at question, antiquities are often treated by the state as an obstacle to the constructor's development. Not only because archaeological service is the most powerful instrument against the building development, but also because in many cases it has proved to be a decisive factor to cancel various non-popular governmental plans. So, for example, there was a major public issue a few months ago with the government's decision to create a unit of burial of garbages near to a small town of Athens. And the residents of this town, with the support of the local community, of the local authorities, react against this plan. And there was a rather violent clash between the citizens and the riot police, and that went on for several weeks with street fights, police patrols invading houses, and so on. Needless to say that there are also big construction companies' interests pressing in favor of the implementation of this unit. And finally, the resolution came through the archaeological legislation again, and the invocation of the protection of a nearby archaeological site. The Supreme Court decided that on the grounds of the archaeological legislation, the decision for this construction was illegal. So there are many other similar cases which integrates our job with today's needs and the social factor in Greece. A former prime minister about 15 years ago accused Archaeological Service as a severe holdback in the country's economic growth. His exact words was that it's a wound on contemporary Greece. Now it seems that the time has come to dismantle the public archaeological service in Greece, but this process is not over yet. The set of drafts of laws that are coming to light is only displaying that they're not confident, they're not assured that they have so far succeeded. We don't have any reason to believe it either, and we feel that it's our duty to stand against it. Thank you.
My name is Yannis Hamilakis. I teach archaeology at the University of Southampton. I have field projects in Greece, so I work with many colleagues at the Archaeological Service in a collaborative arrangement, and I know fairly well the problems that they are going through at the moment. I don't want to speak for too long because we want to have some discussion. I'm just going to raise 2 or 3 points. The first is in relation to what my colleagues said, the number, for example, of employees of the ministry. To understand the situation and to know what's happening in Greece, the 7,000 people that my colleagues mentioned are all employees within the Ministry of Culture, which includes, in fact, many different things. It is the Ministry for Heritage. it is the Ministry for the Arts, it is the Ministry for Tourism. So it is a mega department that includes many different sub-departments, many different facets of contemporary life, economy, and society in Greece. In fact, archaeologists are about 900, 950.
Now.
So the number of archaeologists that are actually, by law, responsible for the protection, the excavation, the exhibition, the interpretation of archaeological finds is only around 900. But we have to remember that we are dealing here with a state archaeological sector. And I think for us working in Britain, this is something that we need to actually not forget and also compare what's happening with our situation here in Britain. I understand that there are many people here that they are not archaeologists, so perhaps they should know that archaeology in the UK, as in most other European countries, is more or less completely privatized, which means that the curatorial sector is extremely weak, and developers have in fact huge authority over what is going to happen with material heritage. The main principle under which heritage works in this country, in the developer sector, is what they call preservation by record. Now that is a euphemism for destruction, which means that, as you know, the developer very often selects through competitive tendering some archaeologists that go and do a very, very rash job. Of course, they work extremely hard, and we know that our colleagues in the developer sector work extremely hard, but under huge constraints to do a very rushed and very quick assessment or excavation, take some material traces or finds or material objects away before the archaeological site, the archaeological heritage, is destroyed to make space for the next Tesco or the next road or the next airport or the extension of Heathrow. So this is how archaeology in this country works. It is preservation by record, which means that it's very little that's produced at the end of it. Means that the reports that our colleagues produce at the end of a very rushed project and process go into the great literature, and very few people in the country actually know about all these archaeological works that are happening. And in fact, our colleagues who work in the developer sector get paid peanuts. Most of them are itinerary staff that after 4 or 5 or 6 years leave the sector altogether because they are completely disillusioned by that kind of work and by the fact that they are completely alienated from the actual result of their own labor. So this is a situation which is the norm in Western Europe at the moment. Now, the situation in Greece is not ideal, and the situation in Greece has many problems that several of us have actually critiqued and written about, but in terms of its power to preserve material heritage, to bring heritage closer to the people, is in a still much better position situation than in the UK or many other countries. And in fact, that's why it's also at the moment threatened by all these cuts. What's happening is that gradually and slowly is becoming privatized. One of the recent things that actually passed through Parliament is that the developer will have the right to select the archaeologists who are going to go and work into the rescue project. Now, this is new to Greece. This is a very recent thing to Greece, but it is the thin edge of the wedge that is going to actually start gradually the privatization of the sector in Greece. So when we are saying that we want to defend and preserve the public character of archaeology in Greece, we actually want to do that because it is a system from which we in the UK and many other countries can learn from how a situation where by law and by tradition archaeology is a powerful institution, has environmental benefits, as Fotis says, can actually protect the environment, can protect public spaces, and it can also mean a lot for people in the country. Archaeologists in Greece in the last 10-15 years produce a huge amount of work as part of a number of mega projects such as the metro in Athens or Thessaloniki or the railway lines, but they were able to do that because they had the power by law and they had the curatorial authority to do that. They said to developers, stop, we have to do proper excavation here. Some of these excavations took months and months and months and produced huge amount of archaeological information that entered the public domain through conferences or publications. This is something that's not happening in this country and elsewhere. So that power and authority of archaeology as a heritage body, public body, to produce knowledge, to actually preserve the material memory of the country and for humanity is now being threatened. That's why I think we need to protect it and support it and express our solidarity towards. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of us, our speakers. We now have some time for questions and discussion. Anyone have any strong thoughts, opinions? Yes.
I was wondering, the revenue from the archaeological sites, you know, the 12 euros or whatever you pay to enter the Acropolis, where does that go? How much is gathered every year, and does it go to the Archaeological Service, or?
It goes to the PSI. Yes, it was gathered. We have a fund. We had a fund in Greece, the Archaeological Fund, where all this money were gathered from the main mostly from the main archaeological sites and museums, so that then they were spread. They were distributed in every museum and archaeological site, because we have the main ones that have so many visitors, and we also have small museums in small islands that they don't have so many visitors and they have needs. Okay, so they were this money were distributed. So last month, with the procedure of the PSI, if you've heard about our public debt, the PSI of the public debt, these money were cut by 70%. They were disappeared, like also the money from hospitals, the money because the Bank of Greece had this money as in an account, and this account was επενδυόταν σε ομόλογα, πες το.
Was forced to buy Greeks bonds.
Yeah, it
that
was
were
money that they
a week later cut by
they bought
60-70%.
bonds with this money so that they have more money. But for the last month, when we knew that the PSI will come, because we knew it from October that the PSI would come, the Bank of Greece, with this money, bought bonds that she knew they will be cut off by 70%. So we lost 70% of our money, of the archaeological sites and also of hospitals, of universities, of everything. And nobody knew. We found out the next day. Not even the next day, a week after, when some people, presidents of universities, went to take money from the account to pay for university needs, and the Bank of Greece told them, "Oh, you can't take anything because we haven't counted yet how much the PSI was, and you will wait for a week." And it's something like 70% cut.
No? It's you? Yeah. No, you.
That was fascinating, the dismantling of the heritage of architecture, and the comparison with the UK I thought was really pertinent. Thank you very much. My question points at two issues. There was a corrupt system inherited from the past, because there was theft from archaeological sites, and the Acropolis Museum, the site, and the Metro Underground. There was illegal digging, and there were people who were employed who were not, because they had connections. That's why stuff was stolen from the museum, because they were untrained, because they were employed, because they had connections, not training. So that has to be. However, how is the past, the crimes of the past, how will they be handled and eliminated? And how will you build the future? And I mean, by building the future, perhaps, why not allow people to sell antiques that they find? How many vases do you need in Greece, for God's sake? So what they have in England, which you referred to, if you find objects, you can sell them. And some of the proceeds you keep, and some of the proceeds go to the state. Why shouldn't this be able to happen in Greece? Because findings are made, illegal construction does take place. a new way of thinking, which you seem to be very much in favour, and I found quite optimistic.
First of all, that is totally out of question because it's against the constitution. Everything. No, so you see, every material trace, object, artifact of the past belongs to the public. So that's the Greek's constitution.
Yeah, no.
The end of the end of the conversation. We need to change to our constitution to start talking about selling vases.
Yeah, but we have legislation that says that if you find a vase and you go to the archaeological service and say, I found this vase. If it is very valuable, the archaeological service and the archaeological service.
The question was about selling them, not.
Yeah, if the archaeological service wants this vase, they can give you money for the vase. Or if it's something which is not rare, you may keep it on your house, but it belongs to the state. But you may keep it on your house. The main problem with illegal digging is not from people that found antiquities on their land. The main problem is people that interfere with organized crime, with organized illegal digging for selling it outwards. And this is not the kind of thing that people just found something on their. There are professional people that they know where archaeological sites are. They are very good archaeologists, some of them, and they find local people and give money to them, or they go to the sea, which is enormous in Greece, and they can do that. And these people interfere with the market of antiquities, and this is something totally different. This is something that's out of the question, of course, for us.
Why is the commercialization of heritage a new thinking? I think it's a very, very old one. In fact, it goes back to the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries, before the legislations for the protection of antiquities. The solution is not to imitate UK in this case. The solution is to convince the UK to implement a protective legislation for antiquities. Because the UK is, in fact, the capital for the commercialization of antiquities in the world. This is the base where all the laundering of antiquities is happening, in the Sotheby's and in the Christies and all the other auction houses. I think the situation is not to sell antiquities, not to actually implement more commercial measures. In fact, the archaeological service is threatened by commercialization. It's not threatened by someone who finds something in his or her field and sells it. The commercialization that comes from the broader kind of social and economic network.
Well, I thought it might be a good time to point out the fact that with Despino and Fotis, we're going to Christies on Thursday, where they're having a huge sale of antiquities, and we're very fully convinced that this is completely wrong, and that antiques do belong to everyone, and they belong in museums and not in the living room of some millionaire where we'll never ever see them again. They're not to be. I don't think they should be sold for private profit. They're public good.
Yeah, it is also a matter if you see antiquities as just valuable things or treasures, or if you see them in a historical context. Because if you sell it as a treasure, like in Christies, the day after tomorrow, they have some Mycenaean vases, Cycladic vases, etc., etc. They have a proto-Cycladic vase, which is very, very rare. We found so few of them, and we don't know the excavation context. So we don't know how these vases were used and what's their significance, etc., etc. If you see them as just a vase for your living room, is the thing. But it's not the way we see it. It's not the way that contemporary society sees antiquities. They are not objects of art, they are historical material.
We have a few questions back. Neil first.
I mean, this discussion raises absolutely fundamental issues, really. It's to do with whether or not you believe the heritage as a whole belongs to the people as a whole, or whether you think it's okay for the rich to turn bits of heritage into a kind of collecting hobby and a set of status symbols in their own houses. Now, so it's very polarised in that sense. And what is happening at the moment, and I'm speaking as an archaeologist, what's been happening for the last 25 years is that because society has been getting more and more unequal, because the concentration of wealth at the top of society has been getting more grotesque, and because that process of class polarisation going on across Europe has accelerated since the crash in 2008, and accelerated again with the imposition of absolutely massive austerity, which is austerity for us. It's austerity for the 80%, but it's not austerity for the millionaires who are stuffing their pockets and getting richer and richer and richer. Because of that, what you've got is an explosion of a whole range of different forms of luxury expenditure at the very top of society, including a mass market for stolen antiquities, plundered antiquities for the rich. And you're either in favour of that kind of system, a free market system where the rich get richer and fill their houses with plundered antiquities, or you're in favour of creating a world in which heritage and all of the other things that we need that enrich society are controlled from below democratically by ordinary people. And you're fighting for two different visions of the kind of world we want to live in. And those who want to live in a decent world, where heritage belongs to everybody, where it's democratised, where it's controlled from below, who want, in other words, to fight the way in which they are trying to change the world, should support our Greek colleagues at 11:30 on Thursday at 85 Old Brompton Road, where we will be picketing Christies selling plundered Greek antiquities.
Question was right at the back there.
There was just quite an incredible email sent by Boris Johnson's advisor to some concerned Greeks who were asking if he would give back various Greek antiquities that reside in various public museums in London, and the response was quite incredible, because he didn't even try to really come up with a sort of phony argument as to why this was. It basically said, well, you can't. This is something that's been paining Boris Johnson for many years, but he's basically come to the conclusion that it does very well for the British economy because 6 million people view it every year, so we're not going to give it back, which is quite incredible, because it's sort of like saying, well, I know mugging you was wrong, but the phone you had actually is quite useful, and I like it for credits I get, so I'm not going to give it back. It was kind of the sort of, there wasn't really an attempt. There was a few things about how it'd be impossible to restore them, but there was no real attempt to sort of justify, other than this is sort of theft and we're keeping it. So it strikes me that the idea of stealing something and then keeping it, for people like Boris Johnson, is totally natural. Taking something and keeping it. So I think, in a way, we kind of need to turn tables and say that, ordinary people also have the right to take stuff and keep it. Ordinary people should collectively take, back control of their heritage, of their culture, of the things around them. I think, I think we're maybe at too early stages to encourage this directly at Christie's, but I think making these kind of slightly more rhetorical observations about what ordinary people have the right to own is very powerful. But just finally, it's a question for the panel. I was wondering what you hope to sort of take out of your sort of whistle-stop tour of the UK after this. What are you going to? What sort of links do you hope to make in the UK, and how do you hope to sort of feed that back into the movement in Greece?
What we're doing in the question was what we're doing in the UK now, and what will happen when we go back to Greece, about the campaign. The campaign is more for pressure, First of all, we had the problem in Greece with our government and with our media, because they never wrote anything. You know, for 2 years it was the public sector is bad, public servants don't work, public servants are overpaid, nothing else, nothing else. And of course this was the total lie, but they didn't care. And of course the international campaign was a way for this to come back to Greece, because you know Greek papers didn't write anything about our monuments, but when Spiegel wrote the news in the newspapers in Greece, and see how democracy works now, yeah, was Spiegel wrote that there are no money for monuments in Greece. That was the news. The news was not there are no money for monuments or excavation, because Spiegel says there is no money for money or excavation in Greece. So first of all, it's the whole publicity things. Second of all, it's the we ask from you, colleagues, archaeologists, etc., to write letters, email our minister, get into our Facebook page and write letters of solidarity for us, so that we believe that with this way we can stop them from cutting off more personnel or funding. But it was more about personnel, because 2 months ago when we started this campaign, they were ready to fire people from the public sector, even us. And the third thing was Olympia, the stealing in the National Gallery and Olympia Museum, because they even after the stealing in the National Gallery, our minister said, "Oh, it's all okay, it's all okay, nothing happened, nothing happened." And then the Olympia thing occurred, and we lost 77 ancient exhibits from the vitrines of the museum, and it was something like I felt this day like if they had cut off my hand, and I felt stronger, and I said, okay, we have to do it ourselves, because the government, we cannot wait anything from the government, so we have to do it ourselves.
So, is it okay? Do you feel that your question was answered, or we need to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm hoping there'll be there's publicity about how people can stay in touch with the campaign, because I think it's a very interesting campaign. There's lots of different ways it could be fed back into stuff that's happening here. Good to make those sort of links.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next question is here.
It wasn't so much a question as to suggest one or two things that might be possible to do in the future.
Frankfurt did the best they've done for decades in France. Of course, that's not to say that the Front National didn't do well, but still, you know, there's a real distortion going on. So I just wanted to ask you what you thought is likely to happen in your upcoming elections in a few words.
I have to make a historical comment. I want to say it from before, that you need history and past, because if Europe sees Nazist parties going ahead, it is because Europe has lost its memory about what was the Second World War for Europe. It really is. And I don't know about Le Pen, because, yeah, of course, 20%, I think it's a very big percentage. But our Nazist party, the Golden Dawn, it's called, they're truly Nazist. They attack people, they attack immigrants, they have a weapon, and they are mostly, it's not just a party. It's in fact, it's a mafia, it's a company. They live from that. Their jobs, if you see their pictures, now the candidates have some pictures. If you see them, you will be frightened. They all work as
Protection.
and they all work at night. Okay, So it's not. It really is dangerous. It really is dangerous. But I strongly believe that Greek elections will have a very much percentage for the parties of the left, the biggest ever, and that they will have the lowest ever for the two former big parties, the Conservatives and Socialists. But it's a whole mess. It's a whole mess because what we suffered for the last 2 years was from the Socialist Party. And it didn't look like a socialism, of course. They can't say why they're different from neoliberals, because they are neoliberals. So it's a total mess, because we have left parties that say, we have four major left parties. One of them, which is on the left, says that, okay, our country has signed for the memorandum, so we have to respect it. And this is not a left ideology, of course. And you know, and we have a right party that says that they don't want to, that they want us out of the memorandum, but they are liberals, and we don't just believe what they say. So it's a total mess, ideologically and practically. But I think that it is important for Greece to show that all the parties that interfere with the IMF projects go down and disappear. I think it will be a meaning to the whole Europe, okay, and to other governments, that if you do what the Socialist Party did in Greece, you will lose more than half of your previous power. I hope Greek people do so. I hope.
Anyone else want to? No? Question by the window there?
First of all, thank you all for your contributions to very thought-provoking and interesting. I'd like to ask about, obviously, the Greek system, as has been described by Yannis already, is a very good one in terms of the public value and how it uses a public resource. I'd like to ask you if you feel that the social and the public value is actually materialized. For example, can we see that in museum visits by Greek people in Greece? And if you think that there is a potential there for your campaign to use, how would you engage with the social value of archaeology to raise awareness about these issues in Greece?
Mm-hmm. I will start from the second question. We have planned a series of school visits to inform about our campaign and the cultural heritage and the value of its protection. So we are also using the association's building at Athens for events and meetings that are meaningful to a much more wider spectrum of citizens than those who are strictly interested in pure archaeological things. So we do try to integrate with the social environment, and so far we're doing well. Okay, it's just a few months that this has been going on, but so far it's been going well. I mean, we're having lectures every Tuesday, lectures about, the concept was something like talk about archaeologically about an area of Greece in association with the local union of Athenians who come from that place. And so every week we have more people involved and participating in these lectures. So yes, we are trying to do that, but I think that it's rather early to speak with numbers. So, but the first sector of your question was
whether the social values actually
materialized
experienced by Greeks.
Statistics by museum visits and so on. I'm sorry, but I'm not quite sure about these kinds of data. Maybe Despina knows more about this. But what I know is that beyond the stereotype that there is a bad archaeological service that is creating you problems with your property, you want to build something and they're trying to put you under limits. That stereotype is kind of changing. I mean, there are many cases where we are in a very good cooperation with the local communities about school programs or even adults programs to get informed about the local past or something. So, but again, I don't have any specific numbers to.
There are no statistics. Is the problem.
Yeah.
The tickets, the data from the ministry are not actually they're not easy to manipulate and work through, and they do not separate between a person from Greece or a person from Greece.
Because they've run out of the blocks where they cut the numbers.
They stopped counting free tickets, and all students have free tickets, so you don't know how. But I have to tell you something. We have started before the campaign and during the campaign. We've started a discussion between us, between the archaeologists, among the archaeologists. What are we going to do in this crisis? What's our role? What's the role of a museum? And we're discussing it. And we want all this campaign is not only for society; it's also for our colleagues. To understand that if we don't interfere with society, and if we don't give something to society in this time of crisis, society will tell you, okay, I don't want you to exist. So I can tell you that there are museums in Greek territory. I will tell you an example. The Delphi Museum is much more active these days in everything. Even in now these days with Easter, okay, they open the museum and they to make labades, Eastern candles, yeah, to decorate Easter candles, etc., etc. We also do this in our association, and these things are not these days in Greece are not just things for open the museum, but also things for parents who can't pay to go with their child to another organized somewhere to pass their Sunday. So we do it for free. And this is something in the National Archaeological Museum. Each Sunday and Saturday and Sunday we have διήγηση παραμυθιών. Narration of stories in the museum for the children for free. And we discuss it because in winter, when we don't have many tourists, because Delphi, Delphi Museum from May to October is full of tourists, but from November, December, January, it's a museum in a little village where people have nothing else as culture, nothing. So the museum is trying not only to be the archaeological museum, but to be a cultural point for the total area, and for Greek people, not only for tourists. It's very important. So they do many things. Last month they had an exhibition with Asterix in Greece, in the Museum of Delphi. So it was so good for local people, because some of them just live on the mountains. They've seen nothing else. And it is very important for a museum to and this is social role of the museum, and this is why we want to exist and to be public museums, because if we were private museums we couldn't do these things for free.